Good morning. Today is February 7th, 2024. My name is Joe Reingold, and I'm here interviewing Hanne Klein. Hello, Hanne. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
All right. Tell us a little bit about your background. If you know anything about your grandparents and your parents, where they lived, where they were from, what kind of work they did, etc.
I'm not sure what kind of work they did. My father's family came from Frankfurt, Germany. My mother's family came from Augsburg, Germany. And they were very prosperous people. They really were. I'm not sure what kind of work my grandparents did. I know that my father was in the fabric jobbing business. He sold fabrics to distributors who, by and large, used them to make upscale men's clothing. I don't know what my grandparents did. I do know that the house we lived in, my grandfather's business, whatever it was on the first floor. They lived on the second floor, and we lived on the third floor. And what else did you ask?
No, so it was a multi-generational living situation, right?
Yeah,
So
but
tell me.
each of us had our own home.
Right. Oh, okay, right. So tell me a little bit about your early childhood growing up there.
Well, I was 3.5 when we left, so I don't remember a whole lot about my early childhood. I do know that we had a wonderful cook and probably what we called maid in those days by the name of Dora, because there are pictures of me in the kitchen licking the bowl when Dora was baking. And I know she used to always say she liked to do laundry on the Jewish high holy days because it never rained on Rosh Hashanah. And that's about the most I remember. I know that I have another picture of me walking with my grandfather down the street, and I still have, in those days, walking canes were like a fashion accessory. People used them not because they needed them for balance, just because it was just like a necktie maybe. And there's actually, I still have it, a walking cane for little children, for little girls like me. And I still have that cane. So.
What do you remember about, when did you actually leave Germany?
1939.
And where did your family go at that point?
Well, we went to New York, of course, because that's where the ship landed. We did not go through Ellis Island because we could only take $20 with us, but we could take things. But we could not take any money except for that $20. And so my parents bought first class tickets on the ship. And so we didn't go through Ellis Island. We just got off the ship. And as you probably know, and I'm sure other interviewees have said, the State Department at that time was very anti-Semitic. And so visas were very hard to come by. But my father had a first cousin in upstate New York. And they didn't know each other, but he knew of us. And he managed to get us the visas and guaranteed our financial support in this country. And so we were allowed in. So.
Did you go directly to that place where he was living?
Never did go there. I think he was in Rochester. And at that time, the federations across the country, they did the same thing with the Russian Jews many years later. Each community said, we can take so many, we can take this number, da-da-da-da. And Three cities came up as possibilities for us. One was Charleston, one was New Orleans, and I do not know what the third one was. I just know there were three. And my father's cousin, his name was Dick, said to my parents, well, of those three cities, if you don't want to stay in New York, and he didn't, which the New York Federation, of course, cheered when they found one fewer family. He said, if you can stand the climate, New Orleans is the only interesting city on the list. And that phrase, if you can stand the climate, was meaningless to my parents. And so we ended up in New Orleans. Yeah.
So did you spend most of your childhood there and growing up years?
I was there. I married at 19. I was there until I married. Yeah.
What was your schooling like there, and what kind of activities did you have?
Well, I went to public school. Public schools were pretty decent back then. Activities, I don't really remember. I do know that even though money was very scarce in New Orleans, until my father could get his feet on the ground, but I do know they hired a French tutor for me because they felt that no educated person, you could not be an educated person if you didn't speak French.
Especially in New Orleans.
Yeah. It didn't stick. I could never get it out of my mouth. So, and yeah, schooling was fine. I was a very shy child, but I made it.
Did you have any siblings with you?
No, I'm an only child, and both of my parents are only children. My father actually had a brother who died very young of cancer. I think he was 18 when he died. So, no siblings. Well, my parents were, I think my mother was in her 30s when she had me. In fact, I know she was 34 when she had me. Unheard of back then.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Did your parents join anything when they got to New Orleans? Any type of organization or synagogue or anything?
Well, yes. The first thing that happened, my mother joined the sisterhood at Temple Sinai, which was the Temple Emmanuel of New Orleans back then, because they couldn't afford the membership dues. So they wanted to affiliate, and so my mother joined the sisterhood, and then later they joined their temple. And I don't know that my father studied to pass his CPA exam, which he did, and then couldn't get a job because he was too old, and nobody would hire him. And I remember he asked someone once, why didn't you tell me before I put in all that time? And they said, typical New Orleans, we didn't want to hurt your feelings. So, but he became very active in the CPA Society. So he did do that.
Was he able to land work at some point?
Oh, he worked. He just not as a CPA.
What did he do?
He was actually a bookkeeper in a small business. They sold sewing machine and equipment to manufacturers, clothing manufacturers. So he did. And then later, after the war, although I may be getting ahead of you,
No, that's okay.
we were in the American sector or quadrant or whatever it was in Germany, and they paid reparations. And he applied for it. He hired a lawyer and he applied for it. And he actually, he never would go back. He would never would, his attitude was, I'm not spending one more penny in that country. Because if he had not to live, but just to oversee things, he would have gotten a lot more reparations. But he wouldn't do it. He knew that, but he wouldn't do it. So my mother learned to cook. She'd never cooked in her life. Yeah.
So she stayed busy with that. Were you able to go to any kind of religious school, Sunday school or anything?
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
I went to Sunday school at Temple Sinai. Yeah.
All the way through high school?
Well, I went all the way through confirmation.
Okay.
Nobody was being bar and bat mitzvah.
Oh.
There was one bar mitzvah and one bat mitzvah in all my growing up years, and they were brother and sister. That was it.
Nobody did it back then. Nobody had a ceremony, yeah.
Yeah, it just wasn't part of Southern classical Reform Judaism back then.
Right. And you said you were there till you were 19?
Yeah.
Almost 19? Then what happened after that?
I got married and we moved to Dallas.
How did you meet your husband?
On a blind date, believe it or not. Yeah.
Was he from New Orleans? Or where was he
Oh,
from?
yeah.
Originally?
Oh, yeah. Very much so. And New Orleans is like Boston in terms of,
Pedigree.
Thank you, that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, exactly.
So what made you guys decide to move here to Dallas?
Well, he was a manufacturer's representative. And this was the center of his territory. He was in the furniture business.
Oh.
So that's what brought us here. And been here ever since.
What year was that?
When we were married,
Mhm.
1954. And we moved here in 1955 because he was living in an apartment in a high-rise building, if you can believe it. And as soon as the lease ran out at the end of the year, we came here.
And he had a job already lined up, obviously. Or did he?
Well, he was a manufacturer's representative, and Dallas was the center of his territory. Yeah.
So how did you busy yourself in Dallas as a new person here?
How did I busy myself? Well, I was a volunteer. I think it was NCJW that had an after-school program for children in schools whose parents worked, and I was a volunteer in that program. And I don't know, I did different volunteer jobs, and then I started having babies.
So how did your family grow? Who did you have?
First was Brian, who is now 66, and then there was Kenneth, who is now 64, I think. I'm close if I'm not exact. And then there were Jonathan and Craig, who are 62.
Are they twins?
Twins.
Oh my.
Yeah.
So where are they all now, and do they have children of their own?
They do. Brian is, well, his main home is in Salt Lake City. It was in Seattle, but it's in Salt Lake City. And he has one child who has 3 little boys.
Oh.
So the great-grandpa.
Wow, great.
And the 3 little boys, the babies, are almost 4, almost 2, and 2 months. So that's Brian. And he also spends time in California. And Kenneth is in San Diego, Jonathan's in Austin, and Craig is in San Antonio.
So 2 on the West Coast and 2 here.
Yeah, you got it.
Do you get to visit them a lot? Get to see them here?
We get together every Thanksgiving, once a year. And Craig actually comes here fairly often, although right now he's not. He should be living here. His job is here. And his wife won't leave San Antonio. So, so he's up here every 2 weeks or so. Not right now, because you can believe this, their dog had knee replacement surgery. And his wife is a family counselor. So she goes to an office and she can't take the dog with her because some of her clients might not like that dog. So he's staying, he can work from home.
Mm-hmm.
So right now he's staying in San Antonio, but he comes up here fairly often when things are normal. Yeah.
So where did all of you live when you moved here and started your family? Where did they grow up? What area? What neighborhood?
North Dallas. Our first house was on, but we were in an apartment when Brian was born. Our first house was on Lavendale by Dealey School.
Mm-hmm.
And our second house was on Malabar, which is south of Forest Lane and between Hillcrest and Central, really.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the children grew up. And then we moved into, when they were all grown and on their own, we moved into a condominium in Uptown.
Oh,
It was fun.
yeah. Great area.
Yeah. It was. I don't know that it still is.
It is.
Okay.
I guess you did a lot of walking around.
Oh, we did.
Mm-hmm.
First thing we did when we moved there was go up and down McKinney Avenue. Restaurants had takeout menus then, and picked up all the takeout menus. Yeah, it was fun.
When did your husband retire?
I'm not sure. It's an interesting question.
How do you remember how old he was? About when he decided that was enough, time to retire?
I don't really know.
Huh?
He died 10 years ago, so it's been more than 10 years. Maybe 14, 15 years ago. Yeah. That would make sense to me.
When the boys were growing up, did you join anything here in Dallas? I know you said you were in a synagogue in New Orleans. What about here?
Yeah. When it was time, when Brian was born, we joined Temple Emmanuel. Yeah.
And I assume they all went through Sunday school, Hebrew school there.
They did indeed. That's right. And none of them did a bar mitzvah.
No? Still not, huh?
But we have my father's watch, the gold watch that all boys got. My father got a gold watch for not having a bar mitzvah. But he got the gold watch.
That's a good prize. Very good. So what would you say Dallas was like? What changes did you see from when you got here until now? I know a lot of things have changed. What did you see?
Monumental.
Yes.
Monumental. It was a very snobbish city. You know, it was very important to join the right organizations and to, I don't know how to put it, but it was just who your friends were. It was very important that you had the right friends, and Yeah, it was just a very snobbish city. It certainly isn't anymore. It really mattered that you were born here, even though it's not the kind of city now where anybody was born here.
Right. Very few natives.
Right, right. So it's a sea change from what it was back then. Yeah. That's what moved my San Diego kids out of Dallas. My daughter-in-law, who's from San Antonio, just couldn't stand it here. And I would say to her, "But Lisa, our friends aren't like that." And she'd say, "That's right, they aren't, but you've been here a long time, and I'm not willing to wait that long." So they ended up in San Diego. Kenneth got a job with a law firm there.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a beautiful city.
Oh, it's a wonderful city. I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how did you come to this place to live at the Legacy? What made you decide that?
Well, I was living, Jack had died, and I was living alone in our condo on McKinney Avenue. And it was time. Uptown was getting hotter and faster and younger, and I was getting older and slower. And actually, I moved to 5-star. I knew people there, and I really needed to get out of Uptown. So I moved to 5-star, and then I put a deposit out here. It was funny. I'd gone to an informational meeting about this place. I mean, the first spade of dirt had not been turned. And I'm sitting next to, I guess I can say his name. I was sitting next to Bert Romberg. And they wanted a $500 deposit. And I said, "I'm not going to do that." And he said to me, "Oh, yes, you are." He said, "You're going to keep your options open." So that's how. And then when it was built, I looked at it and I thought, "Oh my God, this place is for me." I'm very contemporary in my style, and this was a very contemporary place, and it was new, and it promised a lot.
So no regrets about coming here, right?
I don't think so. It's not what I expected. But no, there are a couple of things that I liked very much about it. I liked that it was Jewish, and I liked that it was not for profit. I like both. Both of those things were very appealing to me.
So what kind of things have you gotten involved in now that you're here? Anything special?
No, not really. What do I do? I play bridge. I play canasta. I go to some of their presentations. I read a lot. I'd stopped reading for a while and then started again. I used to be a voracious reader, and then I just stopped. But I've now started again, so I read a lot. I don't know, you know, when I start to list what I do, it's not that much, but I'm never bored.
That's good.
Yeah. So.
If you had to think of something or someone, can you think of someone who would have been a mentor for you in your life? Someone you really looked up to?
I think it would be my father. I was very much a daddy's girl.
Yeah.
And I think that's who it would be.
That's good.
Yeah.
What traits did he pass on to you, do you think?
I don't know. Integrity, honesty, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I'd really have to think about that.
Okay. All right, here's another deep question.
Okay.
Can you think of something that you are the most or very, very proud of that you've accomplished?
Well, I think, now this was back in the, I don't know, twins were born in 62, so this is back in this mid to late 60s. I was part of a group called Panel of American Women. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I have. Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now it seems kind of milky, but back then it was really avant-garde. I mean, we had people telling us that it's the first time they'd ever seen or talked to someone Jewish, if you can believe that. So I think I was very proud of, I don't know if proud's the, satisfied is a better word, of that. Yeah. I was a freelance writer, and I was published in Family Circle, Texas Highways, a lot in the Dallas Morning News. So that was satisfying. I don't know that I'm proud. I think satisfying is a better word for me.
Okay.
I was very satisfied with that. Pleased with myself.
That's good. Have you done any writing lately? Continued with it? You
Nope.
should. You should. My mother was that way, but she kept on writing.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was not a fiction writer. I couldn't do that. But I was a nonfiction writer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty good at it.
That's good.
So,
That's definitely something to be proud of.
thank you.
Well, this is wonderful. Is there anything else you can think of that you'd like to add?
Oh, well, I ended up going to college in New Orleans. I had been admitted to Swarthmore, and I'd gotten a scholarship. No, I didn't get a scholarship to Swarthmore. I take that back. Rabbi Feivelman figured out how we were going to pay for it. He had people that he could call and say, I want you to pay for this person's college education. But I ended up going to Newcomb in New Orleans, where I got a full scholarship, because I felt if I got a full scholarship, I should take it and not go away like that. It just didn't seem fair. And my life would have been very different. I would never have met Jack. It would have been very different. I may never have come back south. Who knows? And then I got a master's degree at SMU. And I was planning to teach in the community college system, but I taught 1 year at SMU, was a terrible teacher. I couldn't have been much worse.
Oh.
And so that was the end of that.
Well, at least you know your strengths and your weaknesses. That's good. I mean,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Okay.
So,
What was your master's in?
sociology.
Oh, okay.
Undergraduate was social work, graduate was sociology. Yeah. And I don't know, what else would I add about my life? I don't know.
Well, we're glad you decided to move here
Oh, thank you.
and make a life here in Dallas.
Thank you. Yeah, I've made a very good life here.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure, I appreciate your interview. Thank you, Hannah.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Okay.